So you're verifying insurance every day, and you still can't predict what's getting paid. You have unexpected balances remaining. Patients are saying that they didn't understand their potential patient portion, and you have write-offs that you just cannot seem to shake. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Um, let's talk about why what we call the exhaustive full insurance breakdown that you have been doing, sometimes sporadically, for years might actually be making it worse.
Now, let's be clear, we're not saying don't verify insurance. You definitely need to verify
Yes,
insurance.
correct.
But what we're saying is do it in a smarter way. So exhaustive doesn't always mean effective.
Yes.
Welcome to the Truth Decay podcast, talking dollars and cents with Sara Baker and LaRae McMullen.
So, LaRae, today is part one. We're doing a two-parter today. So motivated to talk about this. Today is part one of a two-part dive into insurance verification. Because it is more than just a checklist. It's more than just doing something to say that you did it, which is kind of how we think it's treated a lot in an office, in a typical office. So it's actually... It can be, if done correctly, a foundation for better collections for your office, building trust with your patients, and eliminating an ethical dilemma that many of you don't even necessarily understand that you might be facing.
Yeah.
So, LaRae, so far in past episodes, we have spent a chunk of time talking about why patient portions aren't optional, right? We've talked about this quite a few times, worth bringing up again. Patient portions not optional. You have to be collecting them from your patients, and how the way to do that is clear communication. Yeah. So today we're actually going to go upstream in the process to where the mess often begins, which is insurance verification.
Now, we work with a lot of practices, and we see that many offices are just clinging to those exhaustive full breakdowns, or what we call, like Sara said, exhaustive full breakdowns. So they think it's a gold standard, right?
Yeah.
But Sara, what is an exhaustive full breakdown? Why do we call it that? And how does it differ from what we advocate, which is what we like to call a targeted appointment approach?
Yep. So great question, right? So an exhaustive full breakdown is when a resource of the offices, so whether it's an in-office staff member, right, who has to take their time to do this, whether it's a third-party verifier who's doing it out of the office for you, or perhaps another tool, where there are some tools out there, and we'll talk about those. It's when they pull a bunch of possible insurance details. So things like frequencies, downgrades, limitations, max met, or how much max is remaining, benefits at the time that the exhaustive full breakdown is done, whether the deductible has been met at the time that full breakdown is done, right? So all sorts of very specific kinds of information, all before the patient is even seen for treatment. So it's all put down on a piece of paper, right? And almost every single time we talk to offices about this, they have a sheet that they use, that they've been using for years. And they're like, this is the sheet that we use. And they hand it to us. And we're like, okay. And once that sheet is filled out, that information gets scanned and stored somewhere in the patient's, doc center, scan docs, whatever, software you guys are using. And honestly, that insurance, that sheet might get updated again at some point, maybe next year, maybe never again, right? Like maybe there's just one in there and that's what you get the entire time the patient is in your office for like a long time.
Okay, but devil's advocate, that sounds pretty thorough.
Sure. It's thorough. It's got a lot of information on there. First of all, it's a huge time suck, honestly. Yeah. Once you have seen the patient and have a treatment plan scheduled later, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to manually interpret what's on that sheet. So you're going to pull up what you filled out. It's not connected to your practice management software, right? you wrote it out and put it on a separate sheet. So you're going to have to pull it up. You're going to have to look at the codes. You're going to have to calculate the estimate yourself based on, it's like you're doing two different things. You've got this sheet that kind of exists separately from your practice management software.
Right.
And then you've got a treatment plan that you probably have created right from the practice management software's capabilities of creating a treatment plan. So by not putting that information directly into your practice management software, it could do some math for you, but you're having to do a whole bunch of manual thinky labor, which I think is probably the biggest issue. That's step one in kind of the determinations between these two methods.
Well, sure. And like we've talked about in past episodes, the front desk does not have infinite time. They are so busy all the time. So if you're kind of setting it up where you've got all the information, but it's not actually in the system where you're spitting out your treatment plans, what is the point?
Exactly.
Right? So that's the exhaustive full breakdown. So let's explain to our listeners then what the alternative is and what you recommend, Sarah, which is the targeted appointment approach.
Yep. So this is, I want everyone to just hang on, right? Because I can already feel like people going, but no, what? Hold on. So with a targeted appointment approach, what you do is you're still verifying the insurance, right? You verify the insurance, but number one is that you are inputting, here are the two major differences. Number one, you're inputting all relevant insurance information directly into your practice management software. Take that separate piece of paper and shred it and never use it again, honestly, because number one, you need to put it into your practice management software, into the patient's insurance information before that first appointment. Okay. Yeah. So now at least your practice management software is working for you and not against you. You're not working with two different sets of numbers that you're having to do a bunch of manual, reconciling on.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second part of it, though, is that before every single visit, you're going to check on that day's specific information. So you're not going to check on a bunch of stuff that hasn't even been treatment planned yet. Why are you looking up implant benefits if the patient does not necessarily need an implant yet? Why are you doing that? You need to look up what the patient actually needs. You shouldn't be treatment planning based on what the patient's benefits are. You should be treatment planning based on what the patient needs. So what you're going to do is you're going to check that specific day's codes. What's covered? Is there going to be anything out of pocket? Your practice management software is going to tell you that, right? Are there any limitations? Is the plan still active? What benefits are left, that kind of thing. And you're going to be noting what the patient is going to need to be paying you that day, not just guessing from a sheet that you filled out last year, but you're checking that day.
And honestly, that's going to save time on the day that you're checking in that patient, right? Because you're checking in that patient and it's just telling you what an estimated amount to collect is. So you're going to collect that estimated amount, right?
That's right.
So instead of doing the just in case info for every code under the sun or every code that your offices uses frequently, because we do see that a lot, it's just in time data. It's based on what's actually happening that day.
Exactly. So the bottom line is that these exhaustive full breakdowns, they go stale fast, right? They don't show if the max has been met this year, if the deductibles changed, or worse, if the plan has been terminated, right? You have this sheet that offices kind of cling to, and they're like, "Oh, we've got it in there. That means,
it's been checked.
It's good, right?"
At some point.
But what if that insurance isn't even active anymore? And nobody checked, and they felt good about it because it had been checked last year. And now you do a bunch of treatment on somebody and you let them walk out the door and you come to find out their insurance wasn't even active. Now, you might be able to chase that information down, but you're working harder and not smarter, right? And it contributes to the AR. You didn't get paid the day that you should have gotten paid, right? It's delaying all of that payment. So that's
if you can get a hold of the patient and if the patient has no insurance.
That's exactly right? Because sometimes they're difficult to get a hold of. So with the targeted appointment approach, you're checking closer to the appointment, so everything is more up to date. And just like you said, LaRae, you rightfully pointed out, this is always just an estimate, but this is part of the trust building aspect of it, because you are going to be able to give a very good explanation to your patient about where this estimate has come from, how recent it is, what you've done to get this information, why it looks like this. So it's nothing but good.
Yeah. So how about those frequency or history issues?
One of the biggest issues with the exhaustive full breakdowns, right? Because it might say that major restorative is covered at 50%, right? So a crown is covered at 50%. And so you're manually doing some work. And every once in a while, I think up at the front desk, we also understand sometimes there's a little bit of disconnect between what's happening in the back and what's happening in the front. Yeah. So the back might understand that this is a replacement crown. The front might not understand that, right? So they're just looking at this sheet that was filled out last year, and they're like, okay, great, 50% coverage. So you're going to be paying $500 today, when really it doesn't tell you that the patient had a crown on that tooth 6 years ago, and the frequency limit is 10 years. So the payment is actually going to be zero, and you're going to have some splaining to do with the patient, right? Yeah. So with a targeted appointment approach, you catch that before the treatment. You are calling on the specific treatment that is scheduled, actually diagnosed and scheduled, not whatever could potentially come up. And you're spending your resources, your precious resources, your time checking on codes, code inconsistencies. Is this specific crown going to be allowed? You're not guessing, right? You're getting some really good information.
So then let's talk about the amount of time it takes to do those extensive, exhaustive, full breakdowns. Because to me, it's sounding like that's taken a lot of time from the staff.
A ton of time. And in fact, when we get offices that request this specific, we call it a classic approach, which is how we've kind of been real nice about it. When they request still, they're like, nope, we're dying on this hill. We want you to fill out this thing for us. We have to factor in that it could take up 15, 30 minutes plus on each one of these. Calling agents, digging through portals. Sometimes you have to actually call and speak to somebody to get specific answers on some of this information that they want
some
filled
of the
out.
Codes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Again,
that person may never have.
Treatment has not been diagnosed, right? Yeah. So all for treatment, you may never recommend, right? Yeah. So we have to literally charge more for that, because for information that just sits there, it takes tons more time. And it's just, honestly, it's wasted. We believe that it's wasted time.
Yeah. So a targeted appointment approach still uses your resources. It just uses it more intentionally. It still takes that time, but it's information you're going to use.
Absolutely. You're verifying what's relevant that day. So we see that it's focused, it's streamlined, and you're not building estimates on hypotheticals. You're building it on what the patient actually has been identified as needing and diagnosed with.
So I want to talk a little bit about those tools that people are using, the new ones out now, the AI, right? So even with tools like Trojan and AI that kind of reach out and pull that plan info. Yeah. It's got a full sheet. It's got all the information that you would have been putting on your full exhaustive breakdown, right? Yep. If you're using it with that full exhaustive breakdown mindset, then you're still creating a static and possibly outdated data.
1000%. So exactly. Those tools are great. They're amazing. They literally have AI that can call and talk to a carrier. Like, that's wild. It's the wild west right now, but it doesn't replace critical thinking. Yeah. So all of those reasons that we said that the information gets outdated really quickly, that, you are not thinking, you've got a sheet that your assistant ChatGPT or whatever scanned into the patient's, thing, but it's the same feeling of like, okay, so there's this paper that's going to save us and we don't have to do more, but there's a better way, right? They should support a targeted system is how we feel, not replace it. So the tools are great, but they should support that targeted system.
Yeah, for sure. We like to say around here that AI is great. It's going to be, improving, but it's only as good as its user. Some of the clients that we work with actually have this. So we have some firsthand experience with it. And the problem that we see is it is doing a full breakdown and it's just sticking it right in their doc center or their smart docs or whatever. And nobody is going back in and taking the information from that sheet and putting it in the patient's chart or the patient's file. So those claims are still getting denied. Those procedure codes are still getting denied because it didn't check for the right things, right? But even more elementary, they might not even, it's pulling the subscriber ID, but nobody's putting it in the patient chart. So the claim
there's still that disconnect.
It's just stuck. Right, exactly. So it's only as good as the people who can use it. So bottom line, exhaustive full breakdowns are only as good as they are used, useful, and accurate. And most often, they're none of those.
So correct. They're clunky to use a lot of times. They're not always applicable. And again, they're static. So a targeted appointment approach gives you relevant, repeatable, and real-time info. And ultimately, it works with your practice management software, not against it, not at odds with it.
Yeah, so we're trying to make the case for a targeted appointment approach. And how do you actually do a targeted appointment approach? What are the steps? What does this mean?
Yeah, so we had said earlier that you need to be doing insurance verification, but it's not just a checklist. So exhaustive full breakdowns are more of a did it, but targeted appointment approach is really meant to be used.
Okay, so you're looking at that appointment's procedures. So then what?
Yep, so what you're doing is you're going to verify the basics, and again, directly into the practice management software. So it's going to be, is the coverage active? What's the max remaining, right? The deductible status, has it been satisfied? Are you going to need to collect that $50? Because $50 times every day is a lot of money. So you need to make sure that you're seeing if you're going to need to tell the patient that their deductible is due that day. Is there a waiting period? And then ultimately, what are the exact codes for that appointment? What are going to be covered and what are not going to be covered? Are there downgrades? Are there limitations? Don't do that before you need that information. Use your time wisely.
Yeah, got it. So then what you're saying is that this would go directly into the practice management software?
Absolutely. So when you document within the practice management software, it's going to calculate estimates for you and accurately, right? As accurately as you can with it just being an estimate. So it makes your treatment plans tools, not like best guesses that you are having to apologize for down the line because you were missing a big part of the puzzle because you just didn't access that information kind of in an effective way.
Okay, so I want to talk about something that comes up a lot when we are kind of pitching this to clients because real talk, we get a lot of clients that come to us and say, do you do insurance verification? It's definitely a time sucker in the office. This is why we've kind of developed a new way of doing it and why we want to show you guys how to do it. And so one of the things that we get asked is, one of the reasons they do those exhaustive full breakdowns is they think that they can do it once a year or once every 6 months even, right? So when we tell them that we're going to verify every time that patient comes into the office, they hear dollar signs, right? They hear that's expensive. I'm going to have to pay every single time that patient comes in, right? So let's talk a little bit about how we kind of explain that. Why is that still beneficial to them? And should they be doing preventative visits as well? Should they be doing every preventative visit or are we just talking big ones, right?
Yeah. So that's 1,000%. I get that weekly from people. Yeah. Can you just do my preventative appointments? Sure. I mean, we can, but I think we're losing the plot a little bit, right? Because you're trying to avoid surprises, right? You're trying to avoid surprises and you're trying to make sure that you, the doctor, are getting paid for treatment that is owed to you, right? So if you think about how a lot of times in offices, it'll be like, oh, it's just a preventative appointment. We'll just bill your insurance for this. Don't worry about it. And they feel pretty secure. Again, time is a precious resource. And they're like, I'm not going to verify the preventative appointments. But preventative appointments typically have exams. x-rays, fluorides, cleanings, and those walk out unpaid all the time. But if you think about some math, I have my little calculator here. Let's say if the exam is $40, and let's say that you have one go out every day. You have one of all of your hygiene and you didn't check, and perhaps that patient is out of exams for the year, and you're like, it's fine, and you're having to recoup it later, right? So 40 times 5 is 200, okay? That's a week, one day a week. So you've got 200.
So you're saying one that's not covered a week.
One that's not covered. So
right.
You tell the patient, hey, we checked beforehand, and it looks like your code that you have scheduled today, a 0120, there's going to be no pay on this because you've already used up all your benefits for the year for exams, right? But we still want to do it. We still want to make sure that diagnostically you're okay. Are you okay with $40? A lot of times patients will say that's okay. You know, they want to make sure they're okay too, right? But you're giving them the option. But let's say you don't. So that $40 walks out. That happens every day. It's $200 a week. $200 times 4 in a month is $800. Okay? Times 12. That's $9,600 in a year. So $9,600 for one code, one time a day, that you are having to hunt down afterwards. You're having to chase, that you could have had in your pocket, doctor, the day that the patient came in. All you had to do was check and explain it, right? So LaRae, you said that they hear, ching, they hear dollar signs when we're talking about how you need to be checking every appointment. I would argue you can't afford not to check these things.
Yeah.
You are losing money by not checking these things and not giving full pictures of what these patients are going to owe when they're coming into the office.
And that's just one. That's just one, right?
That's
we
right.
see x-rays denied. We see fluoride denied. We see exams denied. We see that often. So that we're talking one code. Now, what if it's 2? What if it's 3? You know?
Well, yeah, ideally, you know, and for the big restorative appointments, you want to verify those as well, right?
Yeah.
So if not, you need to at least prep your patients with a solid explanation about what estimates are, what might change, what their potential financial responsibility could be. We want to minimize surprise, right? In general, you want to minimize surprise, and that minimizes the unpaid balances. But again, we're also talking about building trust, clear communication, patients understanding what is going on and not being blindsided later, which is what erodes the goodwill, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it makes sense to check on the restorative appointments as well, and not just rest on, oh, well, you did a targeted appointment approach for the preventative appointment, and that was just a few weeks ago, so let's just let it roll. Okay, you're still going to have some issues, I think.
Because that could be one claim once a week, and you're
That's
missing
right.
out on almost all that much money.
That's right.
All right, so what about the treatment plans that are made weeks or possibly even months in advance?
So we would recommend that for high dollar or complex plans, we would recheck the benefits before the appointment, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a crown that was covered isn't eligible anymore. Maybe max has been met, right? Have a system that flags these before the patient shows up. And I would even recommend too, if you're using a company like ours, you can ask specifically for treatment plans to be checked on. So, you know, if it's a large treatment plan, if maybe the patient has had an experience in the past where they feel like maybe it was a bit difficult to pay their potential financial responsibility, maybe they expressed that they didn't feel like they had been fully explained what was going on, you know, maybe you do that beforehand.
Yeah.
But we would still recommend checking at least before...
Again.
Exactly, before the appointment, to make sure that the max is still there, that there's not going to be some kind of crazy surprise like, oh, the patient's, if this is a general office and the patient's endo claim processed in the meantime, and now the benefits are completely gone. Important to know. Right.
Actually, that is really a good thing to say, because my mind was going back and I forgot to say it. But when we were talking about like the max, right? I'm thinking on the office, and I'm thinking, well, sure, you're going to put your claims in there and it's going to take that max down. So you can put it in initially and it's going to come down. But that is not taking into effect if they had to go anywhere else.
That's right.
Very,
That's
very
right.
good distinction.
Yep.
All right. So for those of you, there's a lot now that are using the AI. For anybody who's using AI or any outside verification tools, what tips do you have for them?
Perfect. Use them. Absolutely use them. Make sure that somehow that information is getting into your practice management software. Make your system work for you. Make it work inside of your system, not outside of it. And I haven't seen, many that actually interact and update in intuitive ways, but AI is getting better all the time. But it's a tool. It's not meant to replace a user at this point.
Yeah. All right, guys. So if you haven't caught the hint yet, what we're really talking about is this comes down to a mind shift, right, Sara?
Yes, 100%. So as gently as we can say it, offices stick with an exhaustive full breakdown because it's familiar.
Yeah.
So without looking at things like how effective is this? How much feedback are we getting that patients, didn't feel like they were responsible? That they felt like, well, wait a second, I didn't think I'd be responsible for any more.
Yeah.
Why do I still owe something? It feels safe, right?
Yeah.
And people get honestly almost a little defensive when you
They
say,
do.
we don't think this is an effective way to do it, right? But the truth is that we see aging reports all the time, and offices that do these exhaustive full breakdowns have huge aging reports, and they have huge ARs, and they have tons of balances left over, which is what verification is supposed to alleviate, help alleviate. So
the goal then is to stop surprises. And the best way to do that is a repeatable ethical system.
That's right. And ethics is a part of it. We're going to be talking about that in part 2. But stop scanning separate sheets, right? I mean, start using your practice management software like the power tool that it is. They do so much. Many offices only use this much of the capabilities of their practice management software. And some of them have really cool treatment planning capabilities. But
Open dental, just saying it.
Yeah, I know, right? We're not sponsored, but
we're not sponsored.
I kind of love dentures, but so this is how start using them together, right?
Yeah.
And this is how you start to eliminate errors and miscommunication, and you can start to build trust.
Mm-hmm. So you're not just verifying benefits. You're laying the groundwork for honest, compliant, financial, sustainable patient care.
Absolutely. Yep. And honestly, the best part, it's not harder, it's smarter.
Yeah.
So if you're spending the time doing it, work smarter, not harder.
All right. So we're at that point where we do the top takeaways, Sara. So number 1, full breakdowns aren't thorough. They're outdated. You need data that evolves with every visit.
Absolutely. Number 2, the targeted appointment approach to verification puts the practice management software to work. Yep. It's more accurate, it's certainly more up to date, and it's specific to that day's treatment.
And number 3 would be every manual process is an investment. So make sure your time leads to clarity and not confusion or AR.
That's right. So some action steps that you can take today if what we're describing kind of sounds like what you're doing. And you're a front desk person and you do these exhaustive full breakdowns, but you're kind of starting to think, man, we do have kind of a significant AR. I do talk to patients daily about or I'm kind of scared to send statements because I'm afraid that patients are going to say that, right?
Yeah.
So action steps, I would say number 1, run your adjustment day sheet. Yep. So I think that sometimes offices, and we're going to talk about this in part 2, but there are processes that are baked in to insurance payments where certain procedures are written off as a matter of routine. Yeah. And I sometimes think that offices don't necessarily understand the scope to which they are writing off things purely to avoid telling patients that they are going to have a patient portion. It is significant, and you can absolutely be paid for that treatment. You can. So run your insurance day sheet. And if you're writing off denied claims as a process, it's not just inefficient, it's unethical. We're going to talk about it. I hate to tell you, but it is. And you can do better.
Yeah, for sure. So number 2 would be scan your 60 to 90 day AR for common fee patterns.
Yes.
Like we were talking about earlier, our fluorides and exams creeping in. That's a signal that your verification missed something that you could have known about.
Matter of fact, I remember we had a client once that like 30% of their AR was a specific fee. It was a specific number.
I know. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And it was because of the D0350s that they were billing. And they were billing those D0350s, and insurance wasn't paying them, but it was saying that it was patient portion. And so the patients were being not told that that was going to be due to them. They were leaving, and then that was the only balance that was left on the account. And then we were needing to contact them, tell them about how this balance is due when they did not know it was going to be due. No one explained it to them. It was getting to the point, where we were sending balance reminder letters. We were making phone calls, right? And once you get to that point, it's like, man, 30% of your AR is this one code. Let's address why this is happening, right?
Yeah.
Like, we want this money now, not 12 weeks down the line, or never, So, yeah. So, LaRae, this was only part 1 of this discussion. We
could talk for days.
We're going to keep talking about it. And we thank everybody so much for listening to this first part. If verification is your first move, trust is the end game. Yep. And in part 2, we're going to go beyond this process that hopefully we've kind of like made you start thinking about how there might be a better way to do it than filling out that sheet. And I want to talk about how better verification builds trust, prevents ethical missteps, and protects your bottom line by design, not by damage control.
So join us on our next episode, Beyond Targeted Verification, how smart verification builds trust, stops write-offs, and keeps you compliant.
Yes. And if you're listening to this in the future, skip right to part 2, the next episode. In the meantime, if you like what you heard today, consider subscribing, please, on whatever platform you're listening to us on. You can send us an email at hello@thetruthdecaydpodcast.com, or check us out at sddentalsolutions.com. We got some fun stuff on there. We've got some case studies. We've got some, cartoon pictures of our faces. Go check them out.
We're so cute.
So cute.
Yeah. You can also find us on LinkedIn, both Sara and myself, and SD Dental Solutions. And you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. So come find us in any of those platforms that you use.
Absolutely. So thank you all again, and see you next episode.
Bye.
Bye.